Came up with this song this morning, and it was sounding great. But it's not sounding as good anymore because I've been off the guitar too long, and my fingers now hurt from practicing it. So, just for the record, it's a little bit Western, and probably about some sort of outlaw. I don't know. Maybe about my days as an outlaw. If I do come up with any words while I'm playing, I'm making them up as I go along. So that's all I gotta say about that. Let's see how this sounds. So there you go. It's funny. When I really found my sort of style, I found myself playing Western sound and stuff. The first like really good song I came up with, like a year ago when I started playing after like 10 years without playing, and finally kind of figured out how to play. Somebody said, "Wow, it sounds like a cowboy song." I was like, "Yeah, I guess it kind of is." And then I just sort of started developing it. I think it was. I don't. I'm not a fan of country music, but I do like Western music. But it's never been like a thing that I've listened to. I appreciate it, but so it's just kind of weird that that's the style I've sort of gravitated towards. But I've got some other styles too. But I guess it's just because the twang. Of pressing the notes, the strings while you're plucking them. I just found that just made the song sound cooler, and so. But and the other thing that I think I like about it is that there's a lot of dissonance, and I like some dissonance in my music because it's good because it creates tension and then you resolve it, and dissonance is just a great way of doing that. And I don't know. I was really into Nine Inch Nails for quite a long time, and Trent Reznor's all about dissonance. That's kind of his signature way of playing. But that's the one style I have, and then the other one it's something that sounds a little bit more structured and classical, and I call it string theory, and it's based on using lots of so I'm not gonna get into that, but um yeah, so those are just sort of my thoughts on guitar and stuff that I like to play, and um, I, it's interesting because I started playing when I was like 18 or 19, and I came up with a few of my own stuff, a few riffs, but essentially the only way I knew how to play was combining different chords like A. I don't even remember what that one is, and then you add some, and then I might modify them because like, oh, hey, if I don't, if I lift up this finger just for that, it makes a cool sound. But basically, the basis of my playing was on, okay, now I'm playing an A, now I'm playing a D, now I'm playing a G, and remembering those. And so most of my playing was songs from other people. So I'd look up tabs and I would memorize songs, and then I would be able to get into some of the more the plucking aspects, which is a little bit more adds a little bit more complexity than just strumming, which is campfire guitar style, or you could say worship band style. The great thing about guitar is that you can make something that sounds good with very little introduction. If you can just, somebody shows you where to put your fingers for 3 or 4 chords, and you can just play them over and over again, and it might not sound great. People might not say thank you for gracing us with that song, but at least it doesn't like sound obnoxious like the violin. I, growing up, had multiple siblings, younger than me, who were all playing the violin and viola. And to have violin sound good, you have to be very good at it. If you're a beginner at violin, it sounds horrible. And because it's so high pitched. Now cello, I did play cello. I do love cello music, and cello, because it's deeper and less high pitched, it can sound good at the beginning. But guitar is a great instrument for that most people could handle. Piano, I have always found more intuitive because all the notes are just lined up and you can sort of see where you are on them. With guitar, it's a combination of where the strings you're holding down and the strings that you're plucking, and there's a structure, but it's up and down and back and forth, and so I didn't find it very intuitive, and so that's why I would only for years I basically after I'd been playing for like a year, I kept on playing for years, but I plateaued at that point. Any advance in my playing was simply that I had learned new songs and maybe gotten a little bit, more dexterous, but my actual like talent, like as a musician, was just, it just plateaued really early on, and it was still just remembering, now you do A, now you do D, and now you do this altered chord, and it was very, there's nothing intuitive about it. It was I did come up with my first song. Was it? Yeah, so I might find like, oh wow, this like like one little ditty that sounded good, and I would just find it, but it never led anywhere. It didn't like get to where I was really advanced. I did make some advances. I did come up with some good stuff, but again, plateaued. But this past year, when I started playing, I found that suddenly it just really took off. And one of the reasons it took off is that well, for one thing, it was the first time I played post psychedelics. I hadn't done them recently, but that did change my brain, open up my creativity. And then when I have tripped or microdosed playing it, it's mind blowing how much better I got. And so, but in terms of the practical technique that got better was I abandoned making any attempt of playing classic chords and of playing anybody else's songs. I just started playing around and so not being limited to those made me feel more free to it opened me up to just kind of figuring out what sounded good on my own. And so I wasn't feeling like I have to now play a D and like say, okay, no, let's try a G instead. Let's modify. No, it was just figuring out my own chords. I don't know anything about music theory. Like almost nothing whatsoever. Or the mathematics of it. My friend is a musician, and he sometimes he tries to explain it to me, and I don't get it. What's interesting, though, is that I'm still using an intuitive grasp of the mathematical structure, but I can't explain it in terms of mathematics. And apparently, Claude Debussy was the same way. He didn't know anything about music theory. And this is kind of similar to my visual arts, like my drawing. It's supposed to be art. Music is an art, so I'm really good at like figuring out proportions and composition, and that includes with photography. I know how to arrange things in a mathematically structured manner, but I don't know math. I'm terrible at math. I cannot do mathematical equations. But my brain, when I'm doing music or art or photography, is still intuitively using math. And I find that really fascinating. And I just had that thought the other day. And it made me feel a little bit better about myself, actually, and my inability to grasp basic math. I mean, I am functionally retarded when it comes to math. And so then I was like, I don't know how to do mathematical equations like other people, but I still have a mathematical brain. It's just an intuitive sense of it. And that's just kind of cool. I think that's cooler than knowing how to do equations, because you know having a grasp of mathematical equations can be very useful in certain areas of life, but when it comes to intellect, I think that having verbal intelligence is actually much more applicable to everyday life, because you engage in words as the basis of ideas far more than mathematical equations. I mean, when do you use algebra in daily life? I did actually find. I mean, there are situations in some professions where it is useful, but I'm just saying that it's not necessarily a type of intelligence that is as important as a lot of other types of intelligences, because it doesn't. It doesn't. It just doesn't. We're social creatures, and it just doesn't apply to conversations about ideas as much. Um, but I, when I was a senior in high school, I took Algebra 1 with the freshmen, and I was able to pass with a C. And that was very, very hard, because if I can do math if there's just like a couple steps in it, but once there's like a third step or a fourth step and I have to keep them all in my head at once, I can't do it. I went to work for Hobby Lobby and I got a job as a framer, and I was like, great, that's got to be simple. You just measure the frames, and it'll be good for being able to keep my mind busy. But it required basic algebra, and I couldn't do it. They're trying to show me how to do it, and then they're like, okay, here's some practice. I'm going to give you these ones, and you work on those, and then you show me what you got. I would, or they would, watch me while I did it, and I would sit there and I would just start sweating, because it would suddenly occur, like, well, there was also panic, because I have trauma associated with doing math growing up, and I'm not going to get into the details about that, but math is almost like a PTSD trigger. That's an unusual thing, but I was taught math in a very abusive manner, and so yeah, it was a trigger. And the other day, my friend Blake, he was talking about being an electrician, and he's never done anything like that. He doesn't kind of seem like to me, didn't seem like the type of person that would want to become an electrician. I was like, not because I thought he couldn't do it necessarily. I was just like, well, he's more of a free spirit. He's not like a math person in my mind in terms of his personality. And he was like, oh yeah, it's easy. You just got to know some basic, you just got to know some basic math. And he was like, you could do it. And I was like, no, I could not. And he was like, well, you're so smart. Like it's just really basic math. It's not that complicated, and it would be easy for anybody to do. And I said, no, there is no way. And he was surprised, because I'm very smart. and people know me as a very smart person. And so so people, I guess he assumed that I must be good at math as well, and I'm not. And he was like, "What's 9 times 9?" And I said, I have no idea." And he's like, "You can't just kind of picture it in your head?" And I was like, "No. Can you? Like, you're able to have that image in your head of the numbers, like, and he's like, "Yeah." And I said, "But I don't want to keep talking about this because this is kind of starting to make me anxious." It started making me feel like shit because I'm having to talk about something that I was made to feel shame for being bad at growing up, and I'm being challenged about my mathematical abilities. And the thing is, like, there's no reason for him to know that it would trigger those feelings, because I hadn't really told him about it, and it's kind of an unusual thing. But anyway, what is interesting is that I do have a very philosophical grasp of much more basic numbers. I can't do equations with large sums, but I have a system. It's a concept of numerology, but it's based on the philosophical nature of numbers. And I don't know what 9 times 9 is, but when I think of some of the more basic numbers, like number 3, 4, all that, I have a very vivid image in my head of how those numbers function, and it's more of on a philosophical level, and it has to do much more with like the nature of reality, and it has to do with the dynamics of like if there's 2 factors involved, there's a certain dynamic and relationship and effect they have in the world, and that dynamic changes when there are 3. And then I've been able to figure out the symbolic significance of what they represent and why they show up as synchronicities. And so there's a symbolic basis for it. So it's a spiritual and philosophical aspect of numbers. And so it's mathematical in a sense. So it's just kind of weird that I don't know some of the more basic ability to do math equations, but I have a very profound grasp of the most basic fundamental nature of certain numbers themselves, and those are on the more basic level. So I've been able to develop theories on the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 9. And I started with more basic numbers, and I was able to figure out more meaning as I went along, higher numbers. But I'm only up to the number 9, and I haven't figured out some of the other ones. I don't think that 6 and 8 have as much significance, and that's why they haven't shown up to me. You don't really see those as numerological symbols, like in the Bible or other texts. But I'd like to get into that another time. So yeah, I'm going to try to create and post one video a day, and it can be about anything. And my original intent was just to showcase some music, but I started contemplating the nature of music and its mathematical structure. So there you go. Went off on a tangent about math and numbers and how I relate to them. Ideally I want to limit my videos to like a specific topic, so we can kind of stick to a basic point about it. And I'm gonna try to do that in the future, but if I kind of go off topic and I just start talking about something else, I'm just gonna be okay with it, and it's just out there. If anybody's interested in hearing my music and whatever I'm thinking, the more free I think I am to not be afraid of rambling, the more better I'll get at expressing my ideas. The better I'll be, the more I talk about my ideas, the better I am at expressing them. Jordan Peterson, talks about how you've got to do something badly before you can do it well, and to just embrace doing something badly. I don't think I'm doing badly, and but I'm trying to become less self-conscious about it. So we're gonna leave it there. Let me close with some thoughts on future topics that I want to get into. Since we're talking about numbers and math, and I brought up my my theory of my number theory, or theory of numerology, I definitely want to get into that. And one of the reasons I really think I need to get into it is because this is a theory that I developed on my own. I've read some ideas about the symbolic nature of numbers from Jung, but they're not necessarily related to mine. And this is the seeds of some of these ideas were planted by, I would say, Alan Watts, when he talks about dualism and how different quantities of things have different relationships with each other. But what I have developed, my philosophy of numbers and philosophy of numerology, is, I would have to say, my most original idea. I've really developed a lot of other really cool ideas, but they kind of got their start, from hearing other people explain some of those concepts, and I've expanded upon them. My theory of my numbers theory is something that I created from the ground up. I have never heard anybody explain or describe anything like this. And the cool thing about it, however, is that I can actually explain it and demonstrate how it works. First time I had an experience of synchronicities related to numbers in a really eerie way, and I was like, whoa, that's kind of a weird, I'm not going to get into details, but the thought occurred to me, this number might have some symbolic significance in my life. And so I Googled numerology and the number 3 or the number 9. It was one of the two. And good luck with that. What shows up? Every single website that showed up was one created by some new age astrologer who would just make these arbitrary claims about the nature of these numbers, like if you the number 3 means that your angels are with you, or the number 4 means that you have a life path of or it has to do with your personality or something. And I'm thinking, why should I believe you? Like, you have not demonstrated that there's any reason for me to think these, at all, other than that maybe you heard it from somebody else and they, So, I started thinking really long and hard and trying to contemplate it. Like, what if if a number has a certain symbolic nature, what would that be? And I used to know that there were numerological symbols in the Bible. Like the number 7 is the number of completion, and the number 40, the 40 years in the wilderness, and all this sort of stuff. And I knew that numbers were symbolic, but I didn't think that there was any logic to it. I thought it was more like they're put there because everybody knows that if you use this number, they had just kind of decided that, certain numbers mean things. And so they're used just to let people know that the idea that's trying to get across. How many times shall I forgive my brother? 7 times? No, 7 times 70. Now that was sort of, well, I'm not going to get into that, but but what I've discovered is that no, there is a very deep philosophical nature to why numbers mean certain things, and it is something that is extremely intrinsic, and it has to do with the nature of reality. So I'm going to get into that. That's all I got to say for now. And, yep.